Yo, welcome to Punch-Ons. This is my full card predictions and breakdown for UFC Paris. Nassourdine Imavov versus Caio Borralho. Big card coming up, pretty decent for a fight night card. The French cards are always pretty fun as well. The crowd gets involved. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. In this video, I'll give you my full fight predictions and breakdowns for the entire card, starting at the early prelims, and we'll work our way up to the main event later on. Make sure you stick around on the back end of the video as well, because I've got a few interesting little segments at the end. I'll give you guys my lock of the week. I'll give you the punch-on of the week, the one I think is going to be guaranteed chaos and probably the fight of the night. And a few other little things, like I'm going to spin the Wheel of Violence as well. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video. I'll put some timestamps in the description as well if you're only interested in particular fights. Yeah, let's get into it. Enjoy. First fight, we have Shauna Bannon versus Sam Hughes. Absolute barn burner to start the card off. Shauna Bannon is a bit of a somewhat interesting prospect coming up at strawweight. I don't think she's all that talented, but she's got a bit of a vibe of that she could, get a few wins. Sam Hughes, Sam Page, probably the more technically skilled, aggressive, better fighter. But I don't think she's that much better to the point where it's going to overcome the bias that the judges are probably going to have for Shauna Bannon. Both coming off 2 wins. Sam Hughes beat Victoria Dudikova and Stephanie Luciano. Mama B beat Alice Ardouyan in a split decision, and then she submitted Puja Toma in her last fight after, I believe, rocking her with a head kick and getting done with another Indian prospect. Look, I'm going off vibes for this fight. I think probably that Sam Hughes is the better fighter, but I can see Shauna Bannon winning one round and just getting the nod 29-28, maybe 30-27. I think if Bannon even gets one round in the bag, the judges will probably find a way to give her 2. So despite my better judgment of picking the more butch-looking fighter, I'm going to go with Shauna Bannon getting this one done by split decision in a robbery. Not that much of an interesting fight. Moving on to the next one, and we have Brad Tavares taking on Robert Bryczek. Bryczek is a somewhat interesting prospect coming out of Poland, but he did lose his debut to Ihor Potieria, which is not a good look at all. Brad Tavares, I've always been a fan of Tavares. He's faced some pretty solid opposition in the UFC, but he tends to always come up short in the big fights. So if this was a big fight, I probably would be picking against Tavares, but I think Tavares is going to have the well-roundedness, the experience, the skill, and the chin, and I guess the craftiness to put on a pretty decent vet performance here. I don't know a lot about Robert Bryczek, and he might prove to be the better fighter on the night. I just think that Tavares is the smart option here. He's coming off a win, not that impressively, over Gerald Meerschaert, a decision over Meerschaert, whereas he probably should be KOing him based on what we've seen with Meerschaert lately, and he just got cut from the UFC as well. So Tavares to beat him by decision is not the best look, especially because before that he came off a loss to the Iron Turtle, Junyong Park, and he got starched by Gregory Rodriguez. His last win was a decision over Gregory Rodriguez before that. So, yeah, not all that confident with this one, but I do think Brad Tavares has got the skills to get it done here on the feet and probably just be the smarter, more composed fighter to a 30-27, 29-28 unanimous decision. I've got Brad Tavares. If you wanted to put a double chance on KO or split or KO or decision, that's probably not the worst bet either. So locking in Brad Tavares here. He'll get it done by decision, I reckon. Next fight up the card, we got Sam Patterson versus Trey Waters. Both of these guys are coming off 3 wins in a row. Trey Waters has had his last 2 wins in the UFC. He beat Billy Ray Goff and Josh Quinlan, and before that he beat Jalen Fuller in LFA. He did lose before that in the Contender Series to Gabriel Bonfim though. Sam Patterson got KO'd by Yanal Ashmouz a while back there, 2.5 years ago, but since then he's had 3 wins on the trot. He's got rear naked choke submission over Johan Lainesse. He also submitted Kiefer Crosby, and he's just coming off a big win by TKO over Danny Barlow, who was undefeated at the time, and a lot of people were picking Danny Barlow in that fight. So Sam Patterson, he's putting a bit of a run together. I think this fight will be a matter of Trey Waters trying to establish his distance and his range, and using that kind of rangy style that he's got to keep Sam Patterson at bay. And I think for the majority of this, like the start of this fight, Trey Waters will be staying at range and winning this fight and landing his sort of jab and throwing leg kicks and body kicks just to keep Sam Patterson at range. But Sam Patterson's shown he only needs one moment, and he's got the power and the fight IQ to get it done. So I can see this going Trey Waters' way for the first round and a half, and then Sam Patterson getting an opportunity, putting one on his chin, dropping him, and then jumping on and finishing by probably TKO. I can see he could also latch up another rear naked choke. He's shown that he's got the ability to submit opponents, but I think Sam Patterson's going to get this one done by TKO and move his way up that welterweight division. Sam Patterson losing the fight, drops Trey Waters, finds a moment and jumps on and gets it done by TKO late round 2, early round 3. I'm going to go a TKO for Sam Patterson. Not a bad option to have him by double chance, submission or TKO. I think if Trey Waters gets his way, this will go the distance, but I think Sam Patterson's going to be good enough to get this done before the distance. So I'm riding with Sam Patterson. Up the card, we have William Gomis taking on Robert Ruchala. Another Polish prospect here, Robert Ruchala. He's 11-1. He's coming off 2 wins in KSW. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the guys' names that he beat, but yeah, 2-win streak. Whereas William Gomis is coming off a loss to Hyder Emil. Hyder Emil, I think he's good. I think he's a blockhead with power and with a bit of skill, but we just saw him get beat as well by who just beat Hyder Emil? I can't remember, but he got Jose Ochoa, I think it was. I was pretty high on Hyder Emil, so I didn't see it as too big of an issue that William Gomis lost to him, but I've never been all that impressed by William Gomis in the UFC. I think he's just one of those typical kind of French kickboxing, Cyril Gane style fighters that just likes to stay technical and tidy and not get any blood on him. And so we might see Robert Ruchala come in here and just put a pace on him and get it done. But I think in front of the home crowd, as a favourite, I'm expecting to see William Gomis put on one of those just pretty boring, frustrating performances where he establishes his range, distance, leg kicks, teeps, lands the odd jab. But I think we'll walk away from this fight just feeling pretty underwhelmed. But I'm going to go with William Gomis getting this one done by decision. I think he's rangy enough. He's got a slight reach advantage of about half an inch, but he's also got that height advantage. I'll go with William Gomis. Robert Ruchala might prove that he's a better fighter. I just haven't seen enough evidence to say that he can beat William Gomis, but I'm not all that hyped about William Gomis in this featherweight division. I don't think he's all that. Speaking of people who are all that, though, moving up the card to Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Andreas Gustafsson. Whew, bro, I'm actually hyped for this fight. I think this is going to be a train wreck, car crash, absolute disaster of a bloody war. Rock'em sock'em robots, just these two are matched perfectly. I think we're going to see a pretty amazing, scrappy, violent, bloody war in the octagon here. This is the fight that I think is really going to get the card amped up. Even though neither of these guys are French, I think the French card's going to start piling in around about this fight, and they're going to go nuts. The UFC knew what they were doing putting these two together. So Rinat, I've been a big fan of Rinat Fakhretdinov ever since he's been in the UFC. I've watched all of his fights. He's pretty much been doing his thing for the last couple of years, and his only real slip is that draw that he had against Zaleski dos Santos. And since then, he had a split decision over Nicolas Dalby, which was an awesome fight as well. And then he's just coming off a win over Carlos Leal as well, who was a pretty interesting prospect, but we saw just get kicked in the fucking head by Muslim Salikov. Thanks, Muslim, because that was one of those fights in my multi that got me that real good win a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, Rinat, he's a decent fighter. He's scrappy. He's got a good chin. He's got decent fight IQ, but he likes to throw down and go to war. And he's taken on a pretty serious test here in Andreas Gustafsson. Now, Andreas Bane Gustafsson, he looks like a bit of a Terminator, a bit of a marauder. He's on a 4-fight win streak. Only one of those is in the UFC. I did watch his debut against Chaos Williams, and he looked pretty good. He looked impressive. He didn't look like the most technically skilled fighter in the world, but he just put his head down and kept sort of moving forward and put a bit of a pace and a bit of a clinic on Khaos Williams and sort of shut him down and didn't really give him a chance to do much at all. Gustafsson won that fight, I think 30-27, unanimous decision there, and he sort of made Khaos Williams look frustrated and look like he had no options there. So I like Andreas Gustafsson. I think he's got a good chance here, but I just think they're a pretty similarly style matched pair of fighters here, and I think this one's set up to be an absolute war. I can just see these boys feeling each other out for the first minute or two, and maybe Rinat's, kind of looking a bit more defensively sound and starting to land a few shots, and I can just see Gustafsson crashing forward, like headbutting him, dropping elbows and sort of pushing him up against the cage and doing a bit of that head fighting and trying to get his head up under his chin, and I think one of them will get split from a head clash or an elbow, and they'll just be doing dirty boxing, and I can see this just turning into like an all-time sloppy fight of the year contender. Like, I'm getting vibes from this one similar to the vibes I got before Mateusz Rumbetsky versus Mukhtabek Orulbai. I just think these two are just destined for disaster. They're going to be split, they're going to be gassed out, they're going to be throwing sloppy noodle arm punches, landing crazy elbows and shit, and I just think this fight has got very, very little chance of being boring or being over quickly. I think they've both got pretty good chins. Yeah, I'm pretty hyped for this fight. I think the crowd will be going crazy in this fight, and it's quite a hard fight to predict, but I am going to go with the newer, kind of fresher fighter in Andreas Gustafsson. I think it'll be a close fight. I think it'll be a 29-28 decision where both guys have their moments. Maybe Rinat wins round one, just looking a little bit more tidy and composed. Gustafsson will come back and rock him with something big in round two and clearly take round two. And I think it'll just be all on the line in round three, and they'll both be crashing forward into each other. But I can see Gustafsson landing the cleanest shots and Rinat kind of recoiling back a little bit more, while it doesn't look to me like Gustafsson knows how to go backwards. Man, I'm pumped for this fight. I think this will be a good one. I think this will be the fight of the night, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later on when I talk about my punch on of the week. But yeah, pretty obviously this fight is going to be the banger of the prelims. So I'm going with Andreas Gustafsson, 29-28 decision, but close fight, and yeah, really an entertaining fight we've got here. So looking forward to that one. Yeah, so next fight is Marcin Tybura versus Ante Delija. Should be an interesting fight. This time we've got Ante Delija debuting in the UFC, coming over. He's fought in a couple of different promotions, but I think he did the majority of his MMA stint at PFL. He has a win over Maurice Green and a win over Renan Ferreira as well, who's the guy that Ngannou TKO'd in round one for his PFL title defense, I think it was. And he's coming over, taking on the old crafty vet gatekeeper of the UFC heavyweight division in Marcin Tybura. I'm actually a bit of a fan of Tybura. I think he's pretty decent. His only losses have come to Tom Aspinall and Sergey Spivak. Now, the Spivak fight is not the best look, but he is 1-1 with Spivak. Spivak kind of made light work of him in their second fight about a year ago, and he submitted him in, I think, round one with an armbar, which... Look, it happens in the heavyweight division. It's not the biggest sort of smear on Tybura's record. Every time Tybura's come across a sort of jobber, fat, useless heavyweight, he's kind of put a pace on him and made it look somewhat easy. He obviously destroyed Tai Tuivasa in round one just with a brutal bit of boxing, and then smart fight IQ takedown and just rear naked choke on Tai Tuivasa. Made him look like, basically retired Tai. He also whooped the shit out of Janata Deniz, who, to be honest, I don't think he's that good at all, but he's probably a similar level to what I think Ante Delija is going to be. So made it look pretty easy against Janata Deniz, and got that brutal doctor stoppage at the end of the second round, I think it was. And he just beat Mick Parkin, who some people had a little bit of hype on coming up the heavyweight division. I think Tybura is that gatekeeper guy in the heavyweight division. He's good enough that he can beat these guys who are unfit and fat and not all that skilled, but he's always going to lose those big fights to the better guys. I can't see Ante Delija being on that elite level such as Tom Aspinall, so I think we're looking at a crafty performance here for Tybura. I can see him taking down Delija and just smudging him. I think Tybura knows he's not really the highest, most marketable UFC heavyweight. And I think he'll be pretty content to just smudge Ante Delija, take him down, show him that there are elements and that there are levels to the UFC, and just lay on top of him and land some pretty, weak ground and pound. Tybura has multiple ways to win this fight, and I think he's going to show his craftiness and his fight IQ by making this a snoozer. I reckon Tybura is going to take down Delija. We might see Delija have a moment or two on the feet, and if he can crack Tybura early, we've seen Tybura's chin and his defense is not the best in the world when he's kind of outclassed or his opponent has a physicality advantage over them. I just think Delija, we might find out that he's got some technical holes in his wrestling, and I think Tybura is good enough with his grappling to expose them. So wouldn't surprise me if Marcin Tybura got a submission here. I think double chance submission or points for Tybura is probably the play here in terms of betting. Tybura is going to get this one done by late round submission or 30-27 decision. That's my pick. All right, next fight is one that's been added on pretty late notice. It is Axel Sola taking on Rhys McKee. Not going to pretend I know a whole bunch about each of these fighters. I know that Rhys McKee, I think he might have been Hamzat's first win in the UFC. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's been in and out of the UFC. He lost to Ange Lusa, which is not a good look at all. He got beat by Ange Lusa, and he also lost to Chidi Njokwani, who is A8, but nothing special. He did just come off a win by doctor stoppage over Daniel Frunza, who is basically a nobody in the UFC as well. Axel Sola is coming over from Aries Fight Promotion. He's got 3 wins in a row over guys I don't really know. But look, we've got a hometown French guy here as well. Rhys McKee, he's 29 years old. Axel Sola, 27. Axel Sola's he's only 5'11", Rhys McKee's 6'2", at welterweight. That's pretty tall. Look, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this fight. I'm going to go with Axel Sola getting a TKO round 1 or 2 in front of his home crowd. He's a minus 140 favourite, and I think he will get it done over Rhys McKee. Rhys McKee, never been that high on him. I don't think if you're losing to Ange Lusa, you're nothing special, mate. So let's go with Axel Sola getting this one done by points or TKO. Next fight on the card, we've got Umar Sy taking on Brenderson Ribeiro. 2 pretty jacked, scary-looking dudes at light heavyweight. Look like they should be more scary and getting more finishes than they actually do. Umar Sy, I was not impressed at all with his last performance where he got basically tuned up by Alonzo Menefield. I think he showed really poor fight IQ, a poor gas tank, and a very limited skill set in that fight. I think if you're being made to look average by Alonzo Menefield and kind of being out technicaled by, basically less technical than Alonzo Menefield, I think we have a bit of a problem. I'm not all that high on either of these guys. I thought maybe Brenderson Ribeiro might have been an interesting prospect at light heavyweight when he debuted, but he's not had the most successful run in the UFC. He has been active, I'll give him that. Since 2024, he's had 5 fights. So he lost to Mingyang Zhang. That was, I think, his debut in the UFC, and he got starched by TKO by Mingyang Zhang, who maybe isn't all that, as we've seen recently. He lost to Magomed Gadziasulov, who could be decent. We're not too sure about him yet. He did get a split decision win over Caio Machado in a pretty sloppy fight where it kind of could have gone either way. And he beat DR Nurgajai, who is the guy who just lost to Salty Bordiev. So, look, he had a 2-win streak going, and then he just got absolutely nuked by Azamat Mirzakhanov. I don't think Ribeiro is that bad. I just think he's not on the top level, and his fight IQ is not all that good. Umar Sy, definitely not all that impressed by his last performance, but he's had a couple of wins before that where he beat Tuko Tokos and Dawoon Jung. Goes to show that these guys getting close to the rankings after wins like that, it shows how shallow the light heavyweight division is. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Umar Sy. I'm not confident to pick him, but I think he's going to get it done over Brenderson Ribeiro. Brenderson Ribeiro, I think he's going to just struggle to keep up with the pace and the fighting style of Umar Sy, but I don't see this being a particularly high-paced fight. Umar Sy, in front of his home crowd, I think will just be staying at range and looking to be safe in this fight. I think Ribeiro has a chance to land on his chin, and we haven't really seen how good Umar C's chin is yet. He didn't really cop that much damage from Alonzo Menafield. It was a pretty low-paced fight and like pretty boring fight, that last fight. I'm going to give Umar C the benefit of the doubt and think he impresses in this fight. I think he's a pretty short favourite, he's -5 400 favourite on Tapology. It's in front of his home crowd. He's coming off a loss. He's going to want to re-establish himself in the division. I think he'll get it done by TKO or points. We'll go with early TKO or perhaps points. Probably is a double chance there. TKO or points. Umar C. But I hope he looks better than he did against Alonzo Menafield, because that was not an impressive performance. Up the card, we've got Patricio Pitbull taking on Losene Keita, who's debuting in the UFC. This fight got put together somewhat late as well, and it's a good addition to the card. I think Pitbull is a crafty old vet here, and we've got the classic vet versus up-and-coming kind of interesting prospect. Losene Keita's fighting out of Belgium, so he's from that area, and Pitbull is obviously an old Brazilian stalwart who has shown that he's, I think, a win-one, lose-one sort of fighter. I don't think Pitbull's ever going to be close to the title at featherweight there. I think he's not on the same level, and his career's on the down slope. But, he put on a pretty decent, crafty performance against Dan Ige. I just think Dan Ige didn't really show up that night, and I don't know if that's the best indicator of Patricio Pitbull. And even if Pitbull is above Dan Ige, it doesn't really show that he's top level. Losene Keita, I haven't watched any of his fights, to be honest, but the UFC normally knows what they're doing when they pull in their up-and-coming prospects like this. A lot of the time they do get fraud checked, and it might be one of those situations where we see that there are actually levels and Pitbull is on a much higher level. I just think Pitbull's a win-one, lose-one fighter, and I think he's coming off a win and he's about to have a loss. Pitbull, he's coming to the UFC and fought some all-right opponents so far. Obviously, looked like absolute shit against Yair Rodriguez, and Yair's not that good, but I think that was a pretty bad style matchup for Patricio. Losene Keita, he's on a pretty hot win streak, but I don't really know much about the quality of his opponents, but he's got a lot of TKOs in his career, and he looks like he's somewhat explosive. I think he used to fight at lightweight, which could be interesting to see how he handles the weight cut to featherweight. I believe this fight's going down at featherweight. He's 5'9", which is not huge for the division, but it is bigger than the nuggety sort of 5'6" frame of Pitbull. I reckon he'll probably have a reach advantage as well. They've got the new guys the favourite. Sometimes that goes poorly for them, but I do think that Losene Keita is going to get this one done just based off being not that high on Pitbull. So I'm going to go Losene Keita, round 1 TKO. I've just got a feeling this guy's going to come in and make a bit of a name for himself and have a moment against Pitbull, and Pitbull's going to be put back towards the bottom of those rankings. Somehow he's found his way at number 13 or something in the featherweight division. I don't think Pitbull's getting his hands anywhere near that title. Losene Keita, I'll go with the prospect and say that he gets a decent looking highlight real TKO KO in round 1. I'm going to go off vibes for this one. We'll go with Losene Keita. Next up, we have Fares Ziam versus Kaue Fernandes. Fares Ziam is on a pretty hot win streak at the moment. He's looked pretty good in his last few fights. I think he's a decent fighter. I think he's somewhere around that kind of top 10 level at lightweight, and I'm looking forward to having a few new prospects at lightweight. The lightweight division's been a little bit stale over the last few years. We're still seeing things like Gaethje and we've just had Poirier retire. I think they're going to do Gaethje versus Ilya for the title soon, which is a little bit crazy, but Fares Ziam, he's coming off a couple of good wins. He's just beat Mike Davis to a decision, and he had that awesome knee KO over Matt Frivola, which was pretty cool. Split decision over Claudio Puelles is pretty underwhelming. Beat Jai Herbert, and he beat Mikhail Figlak before that as well. Probably the Matt Frivola KO is probably his best performance there. I think Matt Frivola is probably on a little bit of a higher level than Kaue Fernandes. Kaue Fernandes, he's decent. He's got some interesting kind of explosive looking moments on the feet, and he's got a decent jiu-jitsu game. His last 2 wins are nothing to write home about. He beat Muhammad Yahya, who we know is just a complete industry plant for Abu Dhabi. But he did beat Garam, and Garam Kutateladze was a fan favourite and a guy that a lot of people were very high on. But we've seen his decline in the UFC has been fairly swift. So for Kaue Fernandes to beat Garam on his way down, I don't know how much to read into that. Look, this could be a decent fight. I think Kaue Fernandes has got a chance to win this, and it might be a decent underdog. But I just feel like Fares Ziam is the better fighter, and he's got more tools and more consistency and hopefully a better game plan and fight IQ than Kaue Fernandes. It's going to be a good fight, I think. I think we might see this one go the distance or Fares Ziam getting a late rounds TKO. He's a big favourite, which I think the odds are maybe a little bit steep here. I wouldn't put it past Kaue Fernandes to turn up and maybe submit or knock out Fares Ziam, but I do think the safe money here is on Fares Ziam in front of his home crowd. He's the younger fighter. He's got a slight reach advantage and a slight height advantage. I think Kaue Fernandes will look decent, but I think we'll see probably a 29-28 or a 30-27 decision by Fares Ziam, or he could even get a late rounds kind of gas out TKO over Kaue Fernandes. My heart says Kaue Fernandes, my head says Fares Ziam. I'm going to go with my head on this one, and we're going to lock in Fares Ziam by late round TKO or points. Double chance is not a bad one there. Fares Ziam should get this one done and move up the division and look for a decent fight maybe in the top 15. Top 10 after this. I think he's a decent prospect. Nothing special, but he's got a good chance to win this one. Next up, it is Modestas, the Baltic Gladiator, versus Paul Craig, the Belgian. Paul Craig, oh boy, he's a big bopper. He's got some mad submissions. He's gonna throw up that triangle. He's got that he's got that head kick from the ground, the illegal up kick down pat. We saw him just come off that big up kick over Rodolfo Bellato that sent him scrambling across the cage and wrestling the referee. So we know that the Bear Jew's got big power in his legs, and if he gets into that guard position where Modestas is on top of him trying to do ground and pound, we know that he's got those options of latching up the triangle or just kicking him in the head and sending him scrambling. So, no, in all seriousness, this is going to be my lock of the week. I'm obviously going to go with Modestas Bukauskas by KO. Respect to Paul Craig. I like Paul Craig. He's a good dude. He's funny. He's good for the UFC. I can just see this being a vintage Paul Craig chinny performance where he's completely outclassed on the feet. He's looking timid and trying to kind of find a way to jump on the back or look for takedowns. Modestas is just going to stuff his head down to the ground and tell him to get up. And I think Modestas is just going to come in Terminator mode, just put a straight right on his jaw and sit down Paul Craig. I think if Modestas is smart, he will stay away from the grappling. So even if he does drop Paul Craig, if I were Modestas, I'd be just telling him to stand back up. I think, if you're losing to Bo Nickel on the feet and you've got nothing for Bo Nickel, you're not elite on the feet and you don't really belong in the top echelon of the light heavyweight UFC division. Modestas, not the best, most technical fighter in the world, but he's got heavy hands. I like Modestas. He's training with Tom Aspinall. He's coming off 3 wins. He's got a submission win over Marcin Prachnio, a TKO over Rafael Sequeira, and a split decision over Ion Cutelaba. Bit of a mixed bag there, but in those 3 fights, we've seen that Modestas has got finishing instincts. He's got heavy hands, and and he's got decent jiu-jitsu and decent submissions and submission defense too, I think. He does have a loss by KO to Vitor Petrino, but we've seen Vitor's got pretty heavy hands as well, and he's actually up fighting at heavyweight now. Modestas, I can just see him being a Terminator in there, dominating Paul Craig, getting it done by TKO round 1. Definitely going to be my lock of the card. I'm going to have this one in all my multis, and yeah, I can see Modestas getting a big highlight reel KO. And this could be the end of the Bear Jew in the UFC. I got a bit of a feeling that the Bear Jew's just going to, go down bad, face plant on the octagon, and Modestas is going to have a big highlight reel KO here, and we might see Paul Craig get cut from the UFC. Be sad to say, but the saner heads have got to prevail here. The combination of Modestas Bukauskas' heavy hands, he's training with Tom Aspinall, he's got good coaches and good boxing work getting done, and then combine that with Paul Craig's sort of late stage of his career, his downward career trajectory, and his glass jaw. That just spells a recipe for disaster for Paul Craig. So round 1, TKO or flatline KO, Modestas Bukauskas is, I think, a pretty good pick here, and I think the odds will reflect that. Modestas should get this one done. All right, confident with that one. Moving up to the next one on the card, we've got Bolaji Oki versus Mason Jones. Should be a pretty good fight, this one. Bolaji Oki, 10-2, coming off 1 win and 1 loss. He lost to Chris Duncan, which is not the worst look. Chris Duncan is starting to put together a bit of a run at the lightweight division, and he's coming off a win over Michael Aswell, who, I mean, is a bit of a nobody. So Mason Jones, however, even though he's only got the 1 fight in the UFC and it was over an aging Jeremy Stephens, I was pretty impressed with him in that last fight. Jeremy Stephens looked game and looked like he was there to fight. Mason Jones kind of shut him down and got the UD over him, and I think he had Jeremy Stephens in trouble a few times in that fight. He looks somewhat technical. He looks like he's well trained. He's got a good gas tank, decent fight IQ, a little bit of a reach advantage over Bolaji Oki here. I think Bolaji Oki's explosive, but hasn't got the best finishing instincts and hasn't done all that well in the UFC to this point, and he's not been overly active, although he is coming off a win only about 3 months ago. So yeah, it should be a good fight. It's probably a little bit high up the card, I think. I think Mason Jones obviously is a decent prospect, but he's 30 years old. I thought maybe there'd be some, like maybe the Modestas fight should be above this one, and maybe the Pitbull one as well, and even Ferris Ziam. So interesting that they've got this as a feature fight. Maybe they'll change it around before fight week. But my take on this is Mason Jones is going to look superior on the feet. He's going to show a more well-rounded and classy kind of approach, and I think he'll get this one done by decision or TKO. Bolaji Oki he might be a little bit explosive, a little bit schizo and come in with some different strategies. I think Mason Jones might have a bit of a period where he needs to work him out. I just think Mason Jones looked calm and composed and in control against Jeremy Stephens, who's an experienced sort of veteran of the fight scene. I think Bolaji Oki will shoot his shot and do a few different things. Might have Mason Jones in trouble a bit at the start, but Mason Jones will keep his act together and push through to the later rounds and drown Bolaji Oki in the later rounds. So I'm going to go with Mason Jones, late, like round 3 TKO or decision, I think is the play here. Mason Jones, fairly confident about this one. All right, the co-main event of this card is Benoît Saint-Denis versus Mauricio Ruffy. Yeah, it should be a good fight, this one. I think it's a clash of styles, and it'll be good to see where both of these fighters really stand in the division. Obviously, Mauricio Ruffy is up and coming, and there's a lot of hype on him. He's looked really good in some of his UFC fights. He just got an absolutely amazing spinning heel kick win, TKO win or KO win over Bobby Green, and he looked very composed in that fight. He's a Brazilian McGregor, they call him for a reason. He just looks like he's on a bit of a different level on the feet to everyone he's faced, except for James Lontop or James Lontop, whatever his name is, which is a little bit concerning. So I think Mauricio Ruffy's got a bit of presence in the octagon. He's got a bit of aura, and some of the fighters he's faced have felt that and have fought a little bit timidly and gotten knocked out because of that. I think that's what happened to Bobby Green. He's had a bit of a rough run lately where his chin got cracked, and he knew that Mauricio Ruffy could do some pretty explosive stuff to him on the feet, and he just sat back and waited for it to happen. So I don't know that Benoît will do that. I think Benoit's got a bit more dog in him and a bit more of a chance to make this a bit of a dogfight. I think this fight really just comes down to how well coached is Benoît and how good is his fight IQ and what's his strategy going to be here. If Benoît comes in with a strategy of wrestling, we could see this being an interesting fight. Ruffy's grappling's untested. I know he works with the fighting nerds, and he's probably decently coached, but Benoît has been in there with some decent opponents. Now, he obviously had that bad loss to DP where he got tuned up, and he was doing pretty good in that fight, but DP seemed like he was patiently waiting for his moment, and he ended up getting slept in that fight. And then he got absolutely brutalized by Renato Moicano. It was kind of tough to watch because Moicano's not that good. We just saw him get what looked like absolute dog shit against Beneil Dariush. But Moicano took down Benoît Saint-Denis and just dominated him and just landed some nasty ground and pound, and it was quite tough to watch Benoît getting split up like that and busted up. So respect to Benoît. He came back, about 8 months later after that bad ass whooping from Moicano and got a win in the UFC. I think he was supposed to fight, what's the guy's name? Joel Alvarez, which could have been really bad for Benoît, but luckily for him, that fight fell through and he ended up getting Kyle Prepelec on short notice, and he made light work of him and he dominated him with his wrestling to an arm triangle submission. I think that should be what Benoit's strategy is here. He should be looking to fight, to take down Mauricio Ruffy and smother him on the wrestling and drown him in the later rounds. I can honestly see that happening. I can see Benoît showing that he's more experienced and he's got more skills in his toolkit than Mauricio Ruffy. I think we are going to find out how good Mauricio Ruffy's submission defense is and his wrestling is in this fight. If Benoit's well coached and smart, he will look to wrestle. If Ruffy's well coached and smart, which I think he is, fighting with the fighting nerds, he should know that Benoit's looking to wrestle. So we should see a bit of a clash of styles here, and it'll be a matter of, can Ruffy defend the takedowns from Benoît? I don't think Benoit's entries and his offensive takedown threat is all that high, but I do think if he does get Mauricio Ruffy down, he should be able to keep him there and threaten submission. So I think it's an interesting fight. Mauricio Ruffy is the favourite, probably for a reason. I think he'll be far, far superior to Benoît on the feet, and I think he'll make him look a little bit silly out there on the feet. And the turning point, the deciding factor of this fight will probably be, can Ruffy stuff the takedowns? In my opinion, Ruffy will be able to do so. I think maybe we have a round where Benoît does get Ruffy down and maybe holds him there for the rest of the round, maybe gets him down in the centre of the octagon halfway through the fight, just times like some kind of spinning wheel kick or a spinning back elbow and shoots underneath and gets a quick takedown on Ruffy. And in that situation, I think we'll see what Ruffy's made of and whether he does look to get back up or whether he just sort of looks to lose the round and go and move to the next one. I think we might see Benoît get an early rounds win, but as the fight goes on, I think we'll start to see Ruffy pushing his head down, kind of stuffing the takedowns, keeping his distance, doing some spinning body kicks, maybe busting up Benoît and landing some jabs. And I think as the fight goes on, Ruffy's going to work into the fight and find his range and find his mojo and get this one done. I think Benoît will put on a good show for himself, and we will see some holes exposed in Ruffy's wrestling, and we'll see that perhaps maybe we'll walk away from this fight thinking Ruffy is great and technical and amazing on the feet, but thinking he's probably going to have some issues with better wrestlers as he goes up the division. My pick is going to be Mauricio Ruffy by KO or points. I think we'll see a bit of a stylish performance with some awkward moments and a little bit of underwhelming sort of wrestling from Ruffy. Benoît will put on a good fight and he'll want to win in front of his home crowd, but I think I can just see him getting tuned up at range, having his takedown stuffed and ending up sort of face down, ass up with Mauricio Ruffy kicking his legs and telling him to get up while Benoît sort of huffs and puffs and bleeds out of his face and gets up and shows his heart, but eventually just, succumbs to a big shot or just loses the last two rounds clearly. I can even see maybe a 10-8 in the last round where Ruffy's just clip farming and styling on him and hyping up the crowd. I think the crowd should appreciate Ruffy as well. He's an interesting fighter. He's a fun fighter. They call him the Brazilian McGregor for a reason, and I'm going to go with Ruffy to get this one done and keep moving his way up the division. Should be some interesting fights for him at lightweight if he does win this one. All right, and finally, time to break down this main event. This is going to be a pretty good fight. I've been looking forward to this fight for quite a long time. It feels like these two have been on a collision course with each other for a long time, and they maybe were not going to fight each other, but the way the divisions panned out, both of these guys probably would have liked to have thought that they'd earned their title shot already, but there's just too many good contenders at middleweight in order for these guys to not kind of stamp it one more time. So I do believe this is the more legitimate number one contender fight out of the two big fights going down at middleweight. I think the middleweight is almost as good as it's ever been. We've sort of started to see the passing of the torch from some of those, established contenders like the Robert Whittakers and the Israel Adesanyas and the Sean Stricklands and stuff. And we're starting to see these consistently rising contenders work their way up the division. It has taken a fairly long time for it to pan out. I thought these two were going to fight each other ages ago, and this one would be done by now, and we would have our clear contender. But just the nature of sort of DDP being a little bit inactive, Hamzat being all over the shop, and it's just panned out where we've got two big fights happening now. So I like the state that the division's in. I think it's interesting, and it's good to see multiple options for the title fight. And yeah, we've got two big fights to look forward to. Dana said it himself, that the fighter who looks the most impressive out of the Imavov Borralho fight and the RDR Fluffy fight will be the one that gets the fight with Hamzat. I believe that these two are the more deserving contenders, and the winner of this fight should get the title fight. But we know how the UFC works. We know that it's based on performances, timing, clips, like, looking good, fan interactions. So as far as the deserving nature of the fights, the winner of this will be more deserving. But I can see the winner of this fight still maybe not getting the title fight, because I guess you could say that they're less hype and less entertaining at the moment than RDR and Fluffy. Borralho, I think, is the more entertaining fighter, and Imavov is the more kind of patient, reserved, technical, skillful sort of dude. And it's hard to pick these two. It's hard to pull them apart because they've both fought similar opponents. They're both at similar stages of their career. Borralho's almost 33 and Imavov's 29 and a half. That surprised me a bit. I thought Imavov was actually going to be the older guy, but Borralho maybe got into MMA a little bit later. Imavov's got a 2-inch height advantage, and they've both got 75 inches of reach. Imavov's coming off that big TKO win over Israel Adesanya, which is probably his biggest win of his career. That was pretty deadly, watching Imavov, snipe Adesanya and just put him down bad and TKO him. I'm not a massive hater of Israel Adesanya, but just the way that Imavov done him was pretty good to watch, and to see Izzy, legitimately chinned and KO'd for the first time was something that I think a lot of MMA fans were waiting to see. So credit and respect to Imavov for that. He's got a certain style where he's generally a bit more of a patient, kind of rangy sort of striker, and he likes to get things done in a technical and clean sort of way. Whereas Borralho can be a little bit more funky and creative, and I think he's got a few more different skills and a bit more explosiveness than Imavov. It's a good fight. They're well matched. I think there's a lot of possible outcomes here that could happen. Imavov by decision is a very reasonable call here, but I've got a bit of a feel about Borralho. Like I'm surprised to see that Borralho's a slight favourite on the betting odds, because I think Imavov's probably shown to be the more consistently good fighter. But Borralho, he's sort of a bit more of a interesting, exciting type of guy. So normally you see that the odds kind of lean towards the safer bet. But yeah, interesting to see that Borralho is actually the favourite here. I thought that would have swung the other way with Imavov being a slight favourite, but there you go. Which is annoying because I kind of wanted to pick Borralho as an underdog here, but I still I can see this being a patient, sort of controlled performance from both guys early on. I think they're both going to want to establish themselves as 5-round fighters. I think Imavov's had a few 5-rounders where he's gone the distance and looked good. Same as Borralho, he had a 5-round main event against Jared Cannonier. He also is coming off a KO over Paul Craig. I don't think that was 5 rounds. He beat Abbas. He beat Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, which is aging pretty well. And he's actually come and joined the Fighting Nerds now. So he's obviously seen something in that performance in that gym that he was pretty inspired by. And he beat Mahmoud Muradov. I just think Caio is going to be getting a little bit done bad in the first few rounds. I think Imavov will be patient, sniping on the back foot, establishing his distance and frustrating Caio a little bit. Caio is going to be looking to throw that heavy body kick that he threw against Paul Craig. He's going to be sort of looking to find his entries and land some shots on Imavov. But I think Imavov's going to be staying patient and frustrating for the first like half of this fight. I reckon we'll be going into the corners at the end of round 3 with Imavov up 30-27. I think Imavov's just going to do his thing and Caio's going to have to work his way into the fight. I think Caio's got a bit more heart though. I think we've seen Imavov get a little bit broken as the fights go on. I know Strickland made him look a little bit human in their fight, even though that was a really close fight. And we saw Brendan Allen, even though Imavov came back and won that fight too, he took Imavov down and showed some deficiencies and some holes in Imavov's wrestling as well. I think we'll go to the stools at the end of round 3 with Imavov clearly in control, breathing steadily, like looking good, looking in control, looking like he's going to go the distance for a clear 50-45. And then I think the judges in Borralho's corner will tell him straight, and they'll tell him, look, man, you got to do something different here. You need to change your game plan. You're losing this fight. You're down 3 rounds. We need a finish. You need to go and look for a finish. And I think Caio Borralho is the type of fighter that is willing to change his game plan depending on how the fight's going. I think Imavov is pretty content to stick to his game plan and to do what he does well. I think Caio will try to go tit for tat with him on the feet, but lose the opening rounds, and then I think we'll see him change his strategy in round 4. I can see Caio Borralho round 4 coming out and looking a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more urgent, and I think he only needs one moment, one opportunity, and he can find Imavov's back or maybe end up in full mount after a takedown and land some ground and pound. It's a risky pick. I think Imavov is probably the safer, more proven pick here. But I just think Caio is gonna have a chance, and I think he only needs one chance. My official prediction for this fight is Imavov to win all 3 opening rounds, Caio to come out, change his game plan, land something on the feet that gets Imavov's attention, sort of starts to push him back, has him up against the cage a little bit hurt and rocked. He'll shoot for a takedown, or Imavov might drop down as a knockdown or something like that, and then I could see Caio Borralho jumping on his back, swinging around into like full back mount, landing some big ground and pound shots, locking up a rear naked choke, and Imavov will puff out and tap out in round 4. Caio Borralho, round 4, submission, maybe TKO, but I think he's going to get a rear naked choke in round 4 after losing the fight, and it will set up the winner of RDR and Fluffy to get a more convincing win for the title shot. I think I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think the winner of this fight will not be the most convincing way possible. It will be either Imavov by a close or like a boring kind of decision, or it's a Caio Borralho late rounds finish where he's losing most of the fight. So I am going to go with Caio. I think the winner of this fight is going to sadly have to wait for their title shot, or maybe even have to fight one more. Maybe the winner of this fights DDP for a title shot, or maybe they fight the loser of RDR and Fluffy. So, or even the winner. Depends. The UFC will do some crazy shit. Depends. And if Hamzat does Hamzat, he might even, take 2 years off and they end up doing the winner of this versus the winner of RDR and Fluffy for an interim title shot. I can see that happening as well. So I'm going to go with Borralho as my official prediction. Thought he would be a bit of an underdog, but he's not. But yeah, I think Borralho is going to get an unconvincing but entertaining and fluky kind of round 4 rear naked choke submission. We're going with Caio Borralho, and that is it for my predictions for this card. So the punch-on of the week is the fight that I just think is destined for chaos. It's the fight that's most likely to be a rock'em sock'em robots, all-out war, blood dripping on the canvas, and it's the type of fight that gets me excited as a UFC fan and as a fan of blokes beating the shit out of each other. So there's quite a few decent fights on this card, but the one that's really caught my eye and I think is destined to be an absolute bloodbath is the Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Andreas Gustafsson fight. Man, I don't know heaps about Gustafsson, but I watched his last fight against Chaos Williams, and even though it wasn't the most exciting fight in the world in terms of volume and damage and violence, it was still a good performance from Gustafsson, and I could just tell he's an absolute marauder who just wants to put his head forward and back his opponents up to the cage and just whoop their ass. So I already know what to expect from him, but I've watched like all of Rinat's fights in the UFC, or most of them anyway, the last 5 or 6, and I just think he doesn't really have a boring fight in him. I think that even if he's winning or losing, which to his credit, he's been winning most of the time in the UFC since he's been here, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a sloppy war with blood spilling out of both fighters. Neither of these two, I think, are all that well served in the defensive area, but they're just all action, all heart, all kind of forward momentum. And Rinat's had a couple of good wins in the UFC. He had a sick fight with Nicholas Dalby, bit of a wild draw with Alessio Zaleski dos Santos, and he's coming off a win over Carlos Leal, who was juiced up at the time, juiced as fuck. So, man, Rinat's had a tough run in the UFC, but and he's getting another absolute stud coming at him on the weekend. But I'm looking forward to this one, bro. If there was odds on there being blood on the floor on the octagon after this fight, it'd be paying $1.05 surely, if not $1.02. So yeah, the fight of the night I reckon will be, and the punch on of the week that I'm most looking forward to is Rinat versus Andreas Gustafsson. Now, the lock of the week, I think, is a pretty clear one, an easy one this week as well. My money is on Modestas Bukauskas. Now, sadly, last week my lock of the week was Michel Pereira, and I pretty much had him in all my multis, and unfortunately, because of that, we didn't do too well. So take this with a grain of salt, but I do think Modestas is going to get it done fairly clearly and fairly easily in this fight, just based off the imbalance between Paul Craig's chin and Modestas' powers in his hands. So I could see Modestas knocking Paul Craig out in a number of ways, to the body, to the head, by a kick, by a punch, by an elbow, by ground and pound. I think there's 10 different ways for Modestas Bukauskas to knock out Paul Craig, and I'm not surprised to see the fact that the odds for Modestas by TKO are so short. So lock of the week, Modestas Bukauskas. Get it done, bro. Now, the underdog of the week is a bit more tricky this week. I was surprised to see Caio Borralho as a favourite at this point in time. Now, obviously, the odds can change and will change, and I'm not sure how this one's going to end up as we get a bit closer to fight week. But when I was putting the odds together for this video, Caio Borralho is actually a slight favourite. They've got him on SB at $1.88 to Nassourdine Imavov's at $1.92. That probably will fluctuate and change depending on how they both look on fight week and what the punters do with their money. But yeah, surprising that Caio was in the favourite column. I was thinking that he might be at least a $2.50 underdog. So can't call Caio my underdog of the week. Apart from that, there's Benoit came to my mind. Benoit has the potential to get this fight to pull it out of his ass by a wrestling or something, but I just don't know if it's responsible for me to encourage people to put money off Benoit after, seeing some of his recent performances. I actually think my underdog is Shauna Bannon. I'm surprised to see her as paying $3.02 at the moment to Sam Hughes' $1.37. It's women's MMA, bro. Anything can happen in women's MMA. Normally, the more butch, kind of staunch looking, crankier looking fighter's the one that gets it done. But look, it would not surprise me if Shauna Bannon gets this one done by robbery decision. So to see her at $3, I think is pretty solid odds. So I'm going to have to say that my underdog of the week is Shauna Bannon. I actually was going to pick her before I even seen the odds too. So Shauna Bannon is my dog of the week. Woof, woof. All right. Now I'm just going to put my Mystic Mac crystal ball sort of on and predict a couple of possible headlines that we might see in the next couple of weeks after this card. Similar to, I guess, bedtime's bingo board or whatever, but I'm just projecting myself forward to the week after the fights, thinking what are the headlines going to be? What are we going to be reading about? What are we going to be discussing on the YouTube MMA scene? Look, none of these, one of them, some of them, maybe all of them, I don't know what's going to happen. These are just me guessing and spitballing and kind of projecting a couple of things that may happen. So the first one is Gustafsson versus Fakhretdinov as a fight of the year contender. I've already talked at length about this fight. I think this is just a recipe for mayhem and disaster and chaos. It reminds me of the the feeling I had before Mateusz Rumbetsky and Mick Tebek Oralby, and that fight delivered and then some. It's got potential to be a really scrappy, disgusting, bloody, brutal fight. So I can see this one being raised by people when they discuss the fight of the year. Could be wrong, but yeah, I think 9 times out of 10, this is a fucking war. Another possible headline is prospect from outside the UFC gets fraud checked by local UFC gatekeeper again. And I'm talking, of course, about Ante, Delija and Marcin Tybura. So I think there's lots of potential here for Tybura to put on a masterclass, boring snooze fest, UFC heavyweight grappling decision fest. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get to next week and we're just once again talking about a prospect with a bit of hype on him coming into the UFC from a different promotion and just meeting the fat blob and getting sat on his ass by him. So yeah, that would not surprise me as well. The next headline is Paul Craig cut from the UFC. I can see it, man. I like Paul Craig. I always think he comes to fight. He gets the crowd amped up at his at the press conferences, at the weigh-ins and stuff, and he paints his face. He's got the Braveheart vibe going, but how many more times can we see Paul Craig get knocked out before Dana just cuts the cord? So, yeah, Paul Craig cut from the UFC. I can just see it now popping up on the little MMA roster watch thing. Fighter removed, Paul Craig. And the last headline, which I think will be an interesting one, is that the middleweight title shot is still up for grabs. I think that whoever wins this fight in the main event, it's not going to be done in the most convincing way. If Imavov does it by a snoozy type of decision, Dana's going to go, yeah, good luck, kid. I'll see you at the Apex next week. Like, he's not going to be that impressed by an Imavov win. I can't see Imavov winning in like a stylish, convincing way. He did it against Izzy, so I could be wrong there. But I think if Imavov gets his way here, he's going to be stinking the place up. And then if Borralho gets it done, I feel like it's going to be the way I predicted, which is after looking not that good in the fight and then finding something. So either way, whoever wins this fight, I can see them having to have one more and maybe having to fight DDP or the loser of RDR and Fluffy or something like that. We know that Fluffy and RDR are a game. We know that Dana's pretty keen on those two at the moment, and he loves an active fighter, and RDR's been the most active middleweight in the division in 2025 in the last sort of 12 months. So it would not surprise me if we do get a clear winner or like a decent win from either Imavov or Borralho, but they don't really stake their claim for the title. So, yep, middleweight title shot might still be up for grabs, and I'm keen to see how it develops. All right, boys, time to build a couple of multis for this week so you guys can win a bit of coin. And, yeah, me too. So I'm going to give you 2 different multis to put on this week. Now, I've got to apologise just to start because I've done this a bit early in the week just because it's taken me a bit longer than it should. So I'm just trying to be proactive and get this video out a little bit early. So the odds are actually not fully available on the betting apps that I use. So I'm going to have to be a little bit creative here, and I'm just going to give you guys the lowest level odds. So I'm going to give you the head-to-head odds in these multis, but I'm actually going to encourage you to put on some actual outcomes here, which should increase your odds a little bit depending on which app you use. So I'll give you the odds at head-to-head, but you can expect those to be increased odds for if you actually put the outcomes on that I give you too, especially if they're like a double chance or an outright kind of victory method. So the first multi I want to give you is my safe multi, which is, I think, my 3 surest things of the card. Now, obviously, it's MMA. Anything can happen. It's a hard sport to bet on. But the 3 fights that I think should go a certain way are these ones. So we've got Modestas Bukauskas getting it done by KO. I think that is, as I said, that's the lock of the card. That one should be free money, I reckon. He's paying $1.32 head-to-head, so I can't imagine Modestas by TKO will be much more than that, but it should be a nice, good, sure thing to put in your multi. So Modestas TKO should be a good way to get your multi started off The next one is Mason Jones, double chance, TKO or points. I got a good feeling that this should go to points and Mason Jones should win a kind of clinical decision here, but there's also a chance that he gets it done by TKO. I don't see him going for a submission, so I think Mason Jones, double chance, TKO or decision is the play here, and he's $1.62 to win head-to-head, so the odds should be somewhere around about $2 for that double chance. Then we've got Ziam. Again, double chance, TKO or points. He's paying $1.30 for just outright. I think that adding on the TKO or points, double chance should get that one around $1.60 or $1.70 there. So I've got a 3-leg multi. Just head-to-head, that 3-leg multi is paying $2.77, which is nothing special. But once you factor in the methods, I'm expecting that to be around about the $4 mark. So safe multi, around about $4 or $5 will be Bukauskas by TKO, and then Mason Jones and Ziam by double chance, TKO or points. All right, then we move on to the Sicko Multi. Now, the Sicko Multi is only for certified sickos who are willing to throw out a little bit of money. Look, be prepared to lose this coin. I'm not saying these are certain things, but crazy things have happened to me. My best ever multi in the UFC that I won, which I won 20 grand on, was just picking a whole bunch of roughies. I picked, I think it was 5 or 6 legs, and they were all really, really roughies. I had like Muslim Salikov and Rainy DeRitter and a few other roughies to win on that card. So I did really well on that card. So you never know. With the UFC, anything can happen. It's a fight, 2 blokes in the cage throwing hands at each other. Anything can happen. So my multi I've got for you for my Sicko multi this week is a 5-leg multi. And again, I haven't quite got the odds perfect on this one, but it should be paying pretty well. So the first leg of that is going to be Shauna Bannon head-to-head at $3.45. Now, her odds are continuing to kind of go up. Like I've said multiple times throughout this card, I think Shauna Bannon, look, this could be the one that ruins my entire card worth of multis, but I don't know. I've got a feeling that Shauna Bannon's going to get a robbery decision in this card. So I'm going to put a little bit of money on Shauna Bannon head-to-head. I don't think we're going to go with look, if you wanted to go a method, it would probably be by decision or submission, but I think I'm just going to go Shauna Bannon head-to-head, $3.45. I think those odds are too good to ignore. Second leg is going to be Marcin Tybura by double chance, submission or decision. It's very possible that Marcin Tybura gets a TKO, but I just think the way that he should approach this fight should lead him to smudge Delija, and if Marcin Tybura wins, I believe it will be by submission or decision. So Tybura is paying $1.94 just to win, so the odds on double chance, submission or points should be pretty juicy, I reckon. Then we got Losene Keita to win by TKO. He's at $1.50 just to win, so his TKO, look, he's a TKO, he's a knockout artist. I think his TKO chances should be a little bit above that, maybe $1.70 to $2. We're going to add Losene Keita by TKO. If you want to get extra spicy with it, you could chuck him in by round 1 TKO. I'm sure that would add a little bit to your price there. The fourth leg of this multi is going to be Benoît Saint-Denis by submission or decision. Now, I know I'm picking Ruffy. I'm not all that confident, and I could honestly see a world where BSD gets this one done by a disappointing kind of underwhelming decision. So I don't think that you're stupid to back BSD here. He is the more experienced fighter. He's possibly going to ruin the party and ruin the hype of Mauricio Ruffy. So Benoît paying $2.60 to win. His odds of submission or decision are probably going to be around about that $3.50 sort of mark. So could be a good little boost to your multis odds right there. And finally, disappointingly, I thought Caio was going to be an underdog, but he is still like a pretty close favourite at $1.75. That's pretty good odds for a favourite. I was tempted to add Imavov into this multi as well, but I got a good feeling about Caio. So Caio head-to-head at $1.75 is my move. I think maybe if you chucked him in as double chance, you'd want to go submission or TKO. I don't think Caio wins this by points. I think Imavov will be too clinical, but I do believe Caio will get the finish. So look, I put it into my betting app just at the head-to-head odds, and I got $45.67 multi. Anything that you put on outside of the head-to-head is going to increase those odds. So I think that should be a pretty juicy multi, and it is possible. So gamble responsibly, but there's my Sicko multi of the week. Good luck, fellas. Okay, one other thing I'm going to do before I go is I'm going to spin the Wheel of Violence. The Wheel of Violence is a punch-ons institution where we spin a random wheel generator, which is loaded with a whole bunch of outcomes for fights, wacky ones, some just regular ones. And I'm going to watch that wheel spin live, and I'm going to see what outcome comes up, and I'm going to match it up with one of the fights that I think is the most likely for that to happen. So you might be able to chuck that in one of your Sicko Multis as well, and we'll keep track of them and see how well the wheel goes. So here we go. This is my first Wheel of Violence spin. Here we go. Oh, don't be draw. Don't be draw. Ooh, just a sliver in robbery decision. Well, I think that's actually an easy one. That is going to go with, I don't even have to look at the card for this one. I'm going to lock in Shauna Bannon to get the robbery decision of the night. It's the first fight of the night. It's low-level women's MMA. It is like a hot fighter versus a less hot fighter. Read between the lines there. And if any decision is going to be one that we walk away from going, wait, seriously, it's going to be that one. And honestly, I do not give a fuck either. So Shauna Bannon's getting that robbery decision. It's going to be a 29-28, where she probably might not have won any of the rounds. Shauna Bannon, robbery decision.
The wheel has spoken.
Alrighty, and that's going to be it for this week's predictions episode of Punch Ons. Look, it's been a lot of fun putting this video together and learning how to do certain things. It took me a bit longer than it probably should have, but I'm excited by it. I'm gonna be putting some new content out. I want to vary the content up a little bit. If you've got some ideas for me, put them down in the comments below. Which parts of the video did you like the most? Which parts could I probably get rid of? It's turning out to be a fairly long video, so I think I'll be trying to trim it down a little bit in the future, but I do enjoy making these breakdowns and these videos, so yeah, watch out for some more content coming soon. So let us know how you go with your multis. Put some of your sure things or your locks or your Sicko multis down in the comments below. Let's get a conversation started. I'm keen to hear a bit from you Aussie MMA legends and see what you reckon about this channel and whether or not it's worth putting one of these on every week. So thanks for joining me. Cheers for being part of Punch Ons. And if you're watching this, well, you're a fucking mad dog because you're watching the first ever full fight prediction video by me, Cody, on Punch Ons MMA. Take it easy, like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Punch on.